My boss fired me for trying to pay a $15 bill. So I bought their entire company's identity for $12 and sold it back for $100,000. The CEO was screaming so loud I had to hold the phone 6 inches from my ear. I will have you arrested, he snarled, his voice cracking at the edges like cheap drywall. I will sue you into the ground. I will make sure you never work in this industry again. And I just sat there in my apartment, in my pajamas, sipping coffee that had gone lukewarm, and I said, very quietly, very calmly, sir, you might want to call your lawyer before you call the police. Because what I did wasn't hacking. It was shopping. Let me take you back to the beginning. Because this story starts not with revenge, it starts with a warning nobody wanted to hear. My name is Noah. And for 6 years, I was the heartbeat of Calloway and Mercer Solutions, a mid-sized B2B logistics company out of the Midwest that, despite its boring name, moved close to $40 million a year in contracts. $40 million. And you know what kept their entire digital infrastructure from collapsing into rubble on any given Tuesday? Me. One guy. One laptop bag, 2 monitors, a rack of servers I'd built from scratch in 2019, and a wall of sticky notes color-coded by urgency level. I wasn't just the IT guy. I was the network administrator, the cybersecurity officer, the help desk, the software licensing manager, the backup recovery specialist, and the guy who drove 40 minutes in a blizzard to reset a router because the VP of sales had a Zoom call in 20 minutes and couldn't figure out why his internet was down. Spoiler, he'd tripped over the Ethernet cable. I drove 40 minutes in a blizzard for an Ethernet cable, but I didn't mind. I genuinely loved that job. I loved the puzzle of it. I loved walking in on a Monday morning to a system that was humming, knowing every wire, every firewall rule, every patch schedule was something I had built and maintained with my own 2 hands. There's a particular kind of pride that comes from being the invisible backbone of an operation. You only notice what I do when I'm not doing it. For 6 years, things ran smoothly. The website never went down. The email never bounced. The VPN held through a ransomware attempt in 2021 that I caught at 2 in the morning because I had alerts set up on my phone. I stopped it before it encrypted a single file. Nobody sent me a thank you card. Nobody even knew it happened. That was fine. That was the job. And then Marcus Hale walked in the door. I remember the first time I saw him. He was standing in the lobby in a suit that cost more than my car, talking loudly on his phone about restructuring synergies and agile cost optimization. He'd been brought in as the new CEO by the board, a board that had grown impatient with the previous CEO's cautious, steady approach. They wanted growth. They wanted to cut the fat. They wanted Marcus Hale, who had a reputation for coming into companies, slashing overhead, and making the quarterly numbers look fantastic, right up until the moment the foundation he'd hollowed out crumbled under everyone's feet. I didn't know any of that then. All I knew was the way he walked through the office on his first day, slowly, deliberately, like he was appraising livestock. His eyes landed on people's desks, on their equipment, on the server room window, on me. Your IT, he said, stopping in front of my desk. Not a question, really, more like an accusation. Noah Calloway, well, Noah Reyes, I corrected myself, catching the confusion on his face. Calloway was the founder's name, not mine. I'm the IT manager, yes. He looked at my desk, at the monitors, at the rack of hard drives on the shelf. He made a face like he'd smelled something. We'll talk, he said, and walked away. We did not talk, not for 3 weeks. And during those 3 weeks, I watched Marcus Hale gut the company like a fish. He let go of the entire marketing team. We'll outsource it. He eliminated the office manager position. Everyone can manage their own schedules. He cut the corporate account with the catering company, the gym membership program, the employee training budget. Every week, another slice. Every week, the spreadsheets looked a little better and the hallways felt a little emptier. I started keeping a list. Not out of paranoia, out of professional diligence. Every system I managed, every renewal date, every vendor contract, every password stored in the company's password manager. I updated my documentation obsessively. I told myself it was just good practice. But somewhere underneath that, I think I knew. The meeting came on a Thursday afternoon. His assistant, a nervous woman named Priya who had survived 3 rounds of cuts and looked perpetually 1 email away from a breakdown, came to my desk and said Marcus wanted to see me. I walked into his office. He didn't look up from his laptop for a full 30 seconds. Classic power move. I'd read about it in a management book once, back when I still found management books interesting. Finally, he looked up. Noah, Sit down. I sat. I've been reviewing departmental costs, he said, folding his hands on the desk. He had a way of speaking that was very precise, very smooth, like every sentence had been pre-approved by a legal team. And I've identified IT as an area of significant unnecessary expenditure. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I'm the only IT staff, I said. There's no department. It's just me. Right. He nodded. Which is actually the issue. We're paying a full-time salary, plus benefits, for a role that, frankly, doesn't require full-time attention in today's environment. Computers manage themselves. The cloud handles storage. Our software is SAS-based. I'm not sure what you're doing all day, Noah, but I don't think we're getting our money's worth. I stared at him. I genuinely couldn't tell if he was serious. Mr. Hale, I said, keeping my voice even, I manage the network security, the server infrastructure, all software licenses, vendor relationships, the company's domain registrations, email systems, backup and recovery. I stopped a ransomware attack in 2021 that could have cost us every file on the could have, he interrupted, gently, like he was correcting a child, but didn't, because we didn't need your intervention as much as you'd like to believe. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I appreciate your tenure here, but this is a business decision, not a personal one. He slid an envelope across the desk. Standard severance. 2 weeks. I looked at that envelope for a long moment. The heat was rising in my neck and my vision went slightly blurry, not with tears, with something harder than tears. Something that felt like the physical sensation of being fundamentally misunderstood by someone who was too arrogant to know what they didn't know. I picked up the envelope. I stood up. Before I go, I said, I need to flag something important. He leaned back in his chair with the expression of a man who has already stopped listening. The company's primary domain, CallowayMercer.com, is registered through GoDaddy. The renewal invoice came in last week. It's due April 1st, $15. I can forward the invoice to accounting before I leave, or I can give you the login credentials and you can handle it directly, but it needs to be paid or the domain expires. And Noah. He held up a hand. I appreciate the theatrics, but our domain isn't going anywhere. These vendors send urgent renewal notices to scare companies into paying for services they don't need. It's a scam tactic. I blinked. It's not a scam. It's a domain registration renewal. It's $15. It takes 2 minutes. We'll handle it internally, he said. You're the only internal now, I said. He smiled again. The same smile. We'll be fine. Thank you for your service. I walked out of his office. I handed my badge to Priya, who looked at me with enormous, apologetic eyes. I packed my desk into a single cardboard box. It took less than 10 minutes, which was somehow the saddest part, and I walked out to my car. I sat in the parking lot for a while, not crying, just sitting, processing the particular silence of having 6 years compressed into a cardboard box on the passenger seat. Then I took out my phone and I set a reminder. April 1st, CallowayMercer.com renewal. And beneath it, I typed 4 words to myself. Do not pay this. I want to be clear about something, because I know how this sounds. I didn't walk out of that parking lot with a master plan. I'm not a movie villain. I didn't twirl a metaphorical mustache and cackle about the irony of the date. I was a guy who had just lost his job, who was worried about his mortgage, who spent the next 2 weeks updating his LinkedIn and reaching out to old colleagues and applying to every IT manager role within 50 miles. I also want to be clear about what I didn't do. I didn't sabotage anything before I left. I didn't delete passwords. I didn't set traps. I didn't corrupt backups or misconfigure the firewall or forward the domain credentials to a junk email. Everything I had built was left exactly as I had built it, documented, organized, functioning. Because that's what a professional does, even when the people who fired them don't deserve the professionalism. What I did do was check the domain registration, publicly, using WHOS lookup, a tool literally anyone on the internet can use, free, right now, in 30 seconds. It showed me what I already knew, CallowayMercer.com, registered to Calloway and Mercer Solutions, renewal date April 1st, status, active. And then I waited. The weeks passed. I picked up a part-time remote contract. I got a callback for a promising role at a healthcare logistics company. Life moved forward the way it does, imperfectly, stubbornly, one day at a time. April 1st came. I didn't sleep much that night. I told myself it was because I'd had too much coffee. I opened my laptop up around 11:30 p.m. and pulled up the WHOS tool again. Status, active. Renewal date, April 1st. Midnight came. I refreshed. Status, active. 12:01 a.m., April 2nd. I refreshed. Status, expired. I felt something move through me that I still don't have a perfect word for. It wasn't glee, exactly. It was more like the feeling you get when you've been holding your breath for a very long time and you finally allow yourself to exhale. The domain had expired. It was now publicly available on the open market. I opened GoDaddy. I typed in CallowayMercer.com. Hit search. Available. $11.99. I entered my credit card information. I checked out in under 2 minutes. I paid $12 and got a confirmation email at 12:07 a.m. I, Noah Reyes, former sole IT manager of Calloway and Mercer Solutions, fired after 6 years for a cost-saving measure, now personally and legally owned CallowayMercer.com. I closed my laptop. I went to bed. I slept better than I had in months. Wait, it gets worse. Here's what I didn't fully anticipate, and what made this situation spiral into something that broke the internet when it eventually got posted. I knew the domain expiration would affect the website. What I hadn't fully mapped out, or maybe I had mapped it out and just hadn't let myself fully sit with the implications, was the email. Every single email address at Calloway and Mercer used the CallowayMercer.com domain. Every single one. CEO at CallowayMercer.com, accounting at CallowayMercer.com, sales at CallowayMercer.com, contracts at CallowayMercer.com, 43 active email addresses, all tied to a domain that now belonged to me. When a domain expires, the MX records, the routing directions that tell the internet where to deliver emails, stop working. Which means every email sent to a CallowayMercer.com address that morning bounced. And every email sent from a CallowayMercer.com address appeared to the recipient as coming from an unverified, potentially suspicious domain, flagged by spam filters, quarantined, or outright rejected. And because I now owned the domain, I also theoretically had the ability to configure it to receive email. I want to be very clear that I did not do this. My lawyer would later advise me that doing so would have crossed a line, accessing communications not intended for me. I pointed the domain at a blank parking page and did nothing else with it. But here's the beautiful, catastrophic irony. Marcus Hale had his company's contracts, vendor relationships, active client communications, and ongoing sales negotiations all running through email addresses that were now, functionally, dead. I found out what happened next from Priya. She'd texted me, a long, breathless message full of typos that told me she'd found a new job and couldn't believe what had happened and could I call her because she needed to tell someone who would understand. I called her. Noah, she said, and she sounded like she hadn't slept. It started at like 8 in the morning. The phone started ringing. Clients saying they'd been getting email bounce backs. Then Marcus came in. He didn't even know the website was gone yet, and he goes to send an email to a client and it bounces back. And then someone told him the website was down. And I watched his face just, she paused. Noah, I've never seen a human being go that color before. What did he do? I asked. He called IT, she said. And then she laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. He literally called the IT extension. And of course nobody answered, because you're gone, and he didn't hire anyone else, because computers run themselves. And then he started calling vendors. And then he called GoDaddy. And that's when, Noah, I could hear him from 2 rooms away. What did GoDaddy say? They said the domain had been purchased by a private third party and they couldn't provide information about the buyer due to privacy settings. And Marcus he lost it. He was screaming about hacking, about criminal activity. He called the police, Noah. He actually called the police. I pinched the bridge of my nose. What did the police say? They said they'd look into it. I don't think they understood what he was describing, honestly. But Marcus had already convinced himself you'd done something illegal. He said, she dropped her voice slightly, like she was recounting something embarrassing on behalf of someone else. He said, and I quote, that little IT rat hacked our servers and stole our identity to ransom us. I exhaled slowly. Did anyone explain to him that domain expiration and public purchase is a thing that literally anyone can do? I tried, Priya said. He told me to stop defending you and get him a lawyer. The lawyer Marcus retained called me 3 hours later. A very sharp, very precise man named Jeffrey who opened the conversation by explaining that his client would be pursuing criminal charges charges for unauthorized access to computer systems, theft of intellectual property, and corporate sabotage. I let him finish. Then I said, I'm going to give you my attorney's name. I'd recommend you call her before you file anything. My attorney's name is Dana Reyes. Yes, we share a last name. No, we're not related. Yes, people always ask. Dana has been my family's attorney for 15 years, handles mostly estate law, but she has a razor-sharp understanding of property rights and contract law, and she is, under her mild-mannered exterior, an absolutely ferocious advocate. I had called Dana the morning of April 2nd, about 20 minutes after buying the domain, to explain the situation and get her read on it. She'd been quiet for a moment. Then she'd said, very carefully, so you legally purchased a publicly available domain using your own funds, you have not accessed any communications or systems, and you have not engaged in any deceptive activity. Correct, I said. Another pause. Noah, she said, that is legal. That is fully, completely, entirely legal. I know, I said. How much do you want to sell it for? I thought about 6 years of Blizzard drives and 2 a.m. ransomware alerts and Ethernet cables and a cardboard box and the sound of a man telling me computers run themselves. $100,000, I said. Dana didn't even flinch. I'll draft the offer letter. When Jeffrey called with his list of criminal charges, Dana answered the next morning with a 17-page letter that I can only describe as a legal evisceration. She laid out the timeline, domain expiration date, public market release, Noah's purchase using his own personal credit card at 12:07 a.m., documentation of the domain's availability via public WHOIS records, and a crystal-clear explanation of the relevant provisions of the Uniform Domain Name Dispute Resolution Policy, specifically, the sections that make clear that purchasing an expired domain constitutes legal acquisition of property, full stop. She also included, at the end, a single paragraph that Jeffrey later told me, in a very different phone call, in a very different tone, made his client go completely silent. That paragraph read, in part, Mr. Reyes is prepared to resolve this matter expediently and in good faith. He is willing to transfer ownership of the domain CallowayMercer.com to Calloway and Mercer Solutions for the sum of $100,000, $100,000 payable within 10 business days. In the absence of payment within that window, Mr. Reyes reserves the right to negotiate with third parties or to utilize the domain as he sees fit within the bounds of the law. Mr. Reyes would also like to note, for the record, that he verbally warned company leadership of this exact situation prior to his termination, and that documentation of this warning exists. That last sentence was the knife in the ribs, because Marcus had thought this was a criminal matter, and now his own attorney was telling him, this man warned you. You threw the invoice away. A judge is going to read this letter and they are going to feel nothing for you. I didn't hear directly from Marcus after that, which made sense. Everything was now going through lawyers, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious about what was happening inside those walls. Priya kept me loosely updated through texts. Board called emergency meeting. Marcus is pretending he knew about this but was misled. Nobody believes him. Jeffrey told the board that the lawsuit has no merit and they should consider settlement. Marcus screamed at Jeffrey in front of everyone. I need to update my resume, can I list you as a reference? I told her absolutely yes. They're going to pay it. I overheard the board chair on the phone. He said, write the check before we lose the clients we have left. That was day 7. On day 9, Dana received a wire transfer of $100,000 to the account she had designated in the offer letter. I was sitting at my kitchen table when she called to tell me. It was a Tuesday. I was eating cereal. I remember that very specifically. I was eating cereal and watching a video about server rack cable management, because apparently that's who I am as a person, and my phone rang and Dana said, it cleared. I put down my spoon. It cleared, I repeated. $100,000, Noah. Net. In your account. I didn't scream. I didn't jump up and pump my fist or pour champagne. I just sat there for a while, very still, with the cereal getting soggy. I felt something drain out of me that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying, a sustained, low-grade tension that had lived in my shoulders for the last 8 years, really, the weight of being indispensable and undervalued all at once, of being the invisible person who keeps everything working while everyone else pretends the magic happens on its own. That weight just left. Then I transferred the domain. The fallout inside Calloway and Mercer was, by any measure, complete. The board had convened twice during the negotiation period, and by the second meeting, they had reviewed the documentation Dana had submitted, including, specifically, the written record of my exit meeting with Marcus, which I had taken notes on immediately after leaving his office. Another habit of mine, always document everything, always, even when you think nothing will ever come of it. The notes included Marcus's exact words. These vendors send urgent renewal notices to scare companies into paying for services they don't need. It's a scam tactic. A $15 domain renewal. He had called it a scam, and it had cost the company $100,000, plus whatever Jeffrey charged for his time, plus the business they'd lost during the 9 days of email and website outage. I heard from Priya later that 2 of their long-term clients had started conversations with competitors during the downtime. One of them didn't come back. Marcus Hale was terminated on the same day the wire transfer cleared. Priya said the board chair personally walked him to his office, watched him pack his things, and escorted him to the elevator. She described it as, weirdly similar to what he did to you, except nobody in the hallway felt bad about this one. The board brought in an interim CEO, a quiet, methodical woman named Sandra who had previously run operations at a supply chain company in Ohio. One of her first acts was to post a job listing for a full-time IT manager. Priya sent me the link. I looked at it for a while. I thought about it. Then I forwarded it to a colleague of mine who I thought would be a great fit, wrote her a recommendation letter, and accepted a job offer from the healthcare logistics company I'd been interviewing with, at a salary 30% higher than what I'd been making at Calloway and Mercer. Some rooms, once you've left them, you don't go back into. Not because of bitterness, just because you've grown too large for them. I posted the story on Reddit about 3 weeks after everything resolved. I kept the details vague, changed names, kept the specific city out of it, didn't name the company. I just told the story of what happened, the warning, the dismissal, the waiting, the $12 purchase, the $100,000 sale. I expected maybe a few hundred upvotes, a thread of people saying, good for you, and moving on. What happened instead was that the post hit the front page within 6 hours. It got picked up by a legal commentary channel on YouTube. Someone made a TikTok breakdown of it. There was a Reddit thread on a legal advice subreddit where people debated the ethics, the legality, the strategy. A few people said I was wrong for not just letting it go. A few more said I was wrong for not asking for more. The comment that I thought about the longest said simply, you didn't hack them. You just knew something they didn't. And they fired you for knowing it. That felt right. That felt like the whole story in one sentence. Marcus Hale was not a stupid man. I want to give him that. He was sharp, strategic, politically skilled, and very good at making short-term numbers look good. But he had walked into an industry he didn't understand and dismantled the one person in the building who understood the infrastructure holding it all together, and he had done it with the confidence of someone who confuses not knowing something with it not matching. He looked at a $15 invoice and saw a scam. He looked at me and saw overhead. He didn't see that the domain was the company's address, its identity, the thing clients typed into their browsers when they wanted to give money to Calloway and Mercer Solutions. He didn't know what an MX record was. He didn't know what happens when a domain expires. He didn't know, and he fired the person who did, and then the thing that person had warned him about happened, exactly the way the person had said it would, and it cost him everything. There's a word for that. It's not hacking. It's not theft. It's not revenge, even, not really. It's consequence. I want to leave you with one image, because I think it captures something true. The night I bought that domain, 12:07 a.m., sitting in my dark apartment with my laptop open, I had a moment of real clarity. Not the dramatic, movie trailer kind. Just the quiet, ordinary kind, where you see something plain and simple that had been obscured by noise. I had spent 6 years being invisible, being the person who made everything work so seamlessly that people forgot there was a person doing the working. The server didn't crash. The emails didn't bounce. The website stayed up. And because all of that was always true, Marcus Hale had looked at me and genuinely believed that it would continue to be true without me. That the stability I had built was just the natural state of things, self-sustaining, automatic. Computers run themselves. He really believed that. And I think that's the thing I want people to take from this, not the revenge angle, not the money, not the satisfying narrative of the arrogant boss getting what's coming to him. It's this: every system that looks effortless has someone behind it who made it effortless. Every process that runs smoothly has a person who built it to run smoothly. And the moment you fire that person and congratulate yourself for the efficiency, that's the moment the clock starts ticking. Mine ticked for exactly 31 days. And then it went off. I was sitting at my new desk, at my new job, 6 weeks after all of this, when I got a LinkedIn notification. Marcus Hale had updated his profile. New job title, Strategic Business Consultant. New headline, Driving Value Through Bold Organizational Transformation. I looked at it for a moment. Then I closed the tab and went back to work. There was a network vulnerability report I needed to review, and 3 vendor contracts up for renewal next month, and a backup schedule I wanted to tighten up before quarter's end. Real work. Invisible work. Work that matters the moment it stops getting done. Someone out there is reading this and thinking, $100,000 seems like a lot for a domain name. And maybe it is. But here's the thing, they didn't pay for the domain. They were never paying for the domain. They were paying for not listening. For the invoice that got thrown in the trash. For the smirk in the corner of Marcus Hale's mouth when he said we'll be fine. For every IT professional who has ever been told their work doesn't matter right up until the moment the whole thing falls apart. $12 in, $100,000 out. Not because I was clever, though I'd like to think I was. Not because I got lucky, because I was right. And eventually, expensively, undeniably, they had to admit it too. So I'll ask you this, and I genuinely want to know what you think, was what I did wrong. I followed every law. I made every warning. I gave every chance. I watched a man throw a $15 invoice in a trash can and tell me I didn't matter, and then I waited, patiently, quietly, legally, for the universe to demonstrate otherwise. Or is the real question not about me at all? Is it about Marcus, and every boss like him, who mistakes ignorance for wisdom, and efficiency for understanding, and silence for agreement? Was I the villain here? Or did Marcus Hale write this ending himself the moment he threw that invoice in the trash? Drop your verdict in the comments. Because I have a feeling this one's going to divide people, and honestly, after everything, I'm okay with that.
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.